because Flynn adjusted his rearview mirror while adjusting his watch. 2:47 p.m. Perfect timing. At this rate, he'd reach Portland by 8, giving him plenty of time to grab dinner before the rehearsal dinner tomorrow. His sister Emma's wedding was going to be beautiful. She'd been planning it for 2 years, obsessing over every detail from the centerpieces to the choice of string quartet. The interstate stretched ahead like a promise. 6 lanes of smooth asphalt cutting through the heart of Oregon. Marcus had driven this route countless times during college and later for work. He knew every rest stop, every scenic overlook, every speed trap. Route 84 was as familiar as his own driveway. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Can't wait to see you. Drive safe." Marcus smiled and dictated a response through his car's system. 2 hours out. "See you soon, bride-to-be." That's when he saw the flashing orange signs. Bridge repair. Road closed ahead. All traffic must exit. Detour. Next 3 exits. Marcus frowned. He hadn't heard anything about construction on the traffic reports that morning. But Oregon's infrastructure was aging. Bridge repairs weren't uncommon. He took the next exit, following a stream of other vehicles onto Highway 26. The detour signs were professional looking, the kind the Department of Transportation used for major projects. Reflective orange diamonds mounted on metal stands, clearly marked with official DOT logos. Marcus relaxed. This was legitimate. But as he followed the signs, the traffic began to thin. Cars peeled off at various intersections, presumably taking alternate routes to their destinations. By the time Marcus had been driving for 30 minutes, he was one of only a handful of vehicles still following the detour markers. His GPS had been recalculating constantly, the blue line on his phone screen writhing like a confused snake. In 1.2 miles, turn right onto Forest Service Road 42, the synthetic voice announced. Forest Service Road? That didn't sound right for a major detour. Marcus glanced at his phone. 1 bar of signal, flickering between that and no service. The further he drove from the interstate, the more isolated the landscape became. Dense stands of Douglas fir pressed close to the roadway, their branches creating a green tunnel that blocked out much of the afternoon sun. Recalculating, his GPS announced again. The paved road had given way to well-maintained gravel, then to something rougher. Potholes jarred his sedan's suspension. This definitely wasn't a standard detour route, but the orange signs kept appearing at regular intervals, each one featuring the same official DOT logo, the same professional lettering. That's when Marcus noticed he was completely alone. The last car he'd seen was 20 minutes ago. A pickup truck that had turned off onto a side road marked "Private Property, No Trespassing." Now there was nothing in his rearview mirror but empty road and dust. He was beginning to feel genuinely concerned when he crested a hill and saw Salvation, another car. A dark sedan, maybe a Crown Victoria, about a quarter-mile behind him. Marcus felt a surge of relief. At least he wasn't the only one foolish enough to follow this detour into the middle of nowhere. But as the minutes passed and the road wound deeper into the forest, something about the other car began to bother him. It maintained exactly the same distance, never getting closer, never falling further behind. When Marcus slowed to navigate a particularly rough patch of road, the sedan slowed too. When he accelerated on straight stretches, it matched his speed perfectly. Marcus tested his growing suspicion. At the next curve, he deliberately slowed to 15 miles per hour, as if he were being extra cautious. In his mirror, He watched the sedan hang back, maintaining that precise quarter-mile gap. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. The orange detour signs led Marcus deeper into wilderness. The road narrowed to barely 2 lanes with towering fir trees on both sides. Behind him, the Crown Victoria maintained its stalking distance. His fuel gauge showed less than half a tank. He'd started with 3/4, planning to fill up in Portland. Now he worried about having enough gas to escape. "Turn left in 500 feet, his GPS announced, the voice choppy with poor signal. The left turn led onto a track barely wide enough for one vehicle. Grass grew down the center. Another orange sign pointed down the track. Marcus faced a choice: follow the signs deeper, or turn around and confront whoever was behind him. What if this really was the detour? He turned left. After 15 minutes, he saw the first house. Run down, barely visible through trees. In its driveway sat a Crown Victoria, dark blue, identical to the one following him. Marcus stared. Same model, same color, same hubcaps. But the car behind him was still there in his mirror. 2 identical cars. A quarter-mile later, another house. Abandoned looking, newspapers piled by the door. Another Crown Victoria in the driveway. Marcus's heart raced. House after house lined the road, each uninhabited, each with the same car parked outside. He counted. 4, 5, 6, 7 houses. 7 identical sedans. And still the 8th followed behind him, patient as death. What the hell is this place? The road split into a Y intersection. 2 orange signs. Left fork marked Scenic Route, 12 miles. Right fork, Detour continues. Marcus chose right. But as he turned, he saw the Crown Victoria take the left fork. For the first time in over an hour, his mirror was empty. Relief flooded through him. He laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. Maybe he'd been paranoid. Maybe it was just another lost traveler. But the relief lasted only until he crested the next hill. The roadblock appeared like a nightmare. 2 Crown Victorias parked nose to nose across the dirt road, completely blocking passage. 3 men in dark clothing stood beside the vehicles. Black pants, grey shirts, baseball caps pulled low. They weren't construction workers or police. They were something else entirely. Marcus slammed his brakes, skidding to a stop 50 yards away. His heart hammered as he stared ahead. The men stood motionless, watching with patient attention. No urgency, no surprise. They'd been waiting for him. Behind him, dust rose in the distance. Marcus spun around and saw it. The Crown Victoria from the Scenic Route, approaching from his rear. It had cut off his escape. Panic flooded his system. Marcus threw his car into reverse, tires spinning in loose dirt as he backed toward the intersection. Maybe he could reach the fork, find another route. But as he reached the Y intersection, the pursuing sedan emerged and positioned itself to block the left fork. Its driver stepped out, another man in identical dark clothing. Marcus sat at the intersection, engine idling, completely trapped. Through his windshield, the 3 men from the roadblock walked toward him with unhurried steps. In his mirrors, the 4th man approached from behind. They moved with mechanical precision, like actors following a script. Options raced through his mind. Ram the roadblock? The Crown Victorias looked heavy and solid. His sedan would crumple like foil. Run into the forest? He wore dress shoes, had no supplies, no knowledge of terrain. The men were getting closer. Marcus made a desperate decision. There was still one route they hadn't blocked, the right fork he'd avoided earlier. He gunned his engine and took the turn at dangerous speed, gravel spraying from his tires. Behind him, car doors slammed and engine started. The right fork led deeper into forest than Marcus had thought possible. The road became barely more than 2 tire tracks separated by weeds. Branches scraped his windows. Low-hanging limbs swept across his windshield. In his rearview mirror, headlights bounced through trees. All 4 Crown Victorias were following now, maintaining formation like hunting wolves. Marcus's sedan wasn't built for this terrain. The undercarriage scraped rocks and logs. His suspension grew with each impact. Terror kept his foot on the accelerator. The track curved sharply left. Marcus took the turn too fast, rear wheels sliding sideways. For a moment, he thought he'd slam into a massive pine, but his tires found soil at the last second. Behind him, the Crown Victorias navigated the same turn with ease, as if they'd driven this route many times before. The chase continued for what felt like hours, but was probably 20 minutes. His fuel gauge dropped to a quarter tank, then an eighth. Warning lights flashed on his dashboard. Engine temperature climbed dangerously high. Just when he thought his car would die, the trees began to thin. Through gaps, Marcus caught glimpses of open sky. The track was leading him out. He burst from the tree line into a wide clearing and slammed his brakes. Ahead stretched what looked like a small town, but not like any town Marcus had ever seen. Buildings arranged in a perfect grid, each structure identical. Small houses, all painted the same off-white, same windows, same roofs. Like a suburban development, but sterile and wrong. And parked in front of every single house was a Crown Victoria. Marcus sat at the clearing's edge, engine ticking as it cooled, staring at the impossible sight. The town contained maybe 30 buildings in neat rows, streets in a perfect grid, street lamps evenly spaced, everything geometrically precise, but no people visible anywhere. Behind him, the 4 Crown Victorias emerged from the forest and stopped in a line, engines rumbling softly. The drivers sat still in identical dark clothes. They weren't advancing, they were waiting. Marcus looked at his fuel gauge. The needle hovered just above empty. His car might reach the far side of town, but definitely not back through the forest to civilization. He was trapped. Ahead, the main street beckoned, the only way forward. Marcus put his car in drive and slowly entered the community. The street was perfectly paved, smooth as glass. Houses on either side were identical, small, single-story structures with tiny lawns and narrow driveways. Each driveway contained the same dark sedan. As he drove deeper, details made his skin crawl. The lawns were too perfect. Every blade of grass the same height, same shade of green. No weeds, no brown spots, no variation. Houses showed no wear or weather damage. Fresh paint, spotless windows, perfectly straight roof lines. It was like a movie set, a facade hiding something fundamentally wrong. Marcus reached the town center, where 4 streets intersected around a small park. In the middle stood a gazebo, painted the same off-white as the houses. And sitting in the gazebo was finally a person. An elderly man in a rocking chair, wearing a cardigan and slacks. He was reading a newspaper and appeared completely normal. The first normal thing Marcus had seen since leaving the interstate. Marcus pulled to the curb and got out. Marcus called out as he approached the gazebo. "Excuse me, I'm lost. I was following a detour and ended up here. The elderly man looked up from his newspaper and smiled. It was a pleasant, grandfatherly smile that should have been reassuring, but something about it made Marcus's skin crawl. "Oh, you're not lost, son," the man said. "You're exactly where you're supposed to be. I don't understand. I was trying to get to Portland. There was road construction. Please sit down." The man gestured to another chair. "You must be tired after your drive." Marcus remained standing. "I just need directions back to the interstate. My car's almost out of gas." "Gas?" the man chuckled. "Oh, you won't be needing gas anymore. None of us do." "What do you mean?" The man folded his newspaper carefully. "You know, Marcus, we've been waiting for you for quite some time." Marcus felt ice water flood his veins. "How do you know my name?" "We know lots of things about you. You're 28 years old. You work in software development in Seattle. You're driving to your sister Emma's wedding in Portland. You left your apartment at 11:43 this morning after having coffee and a bagel with cream cheese." "That's impossible. How could you?" "You're wondering about the detour signs, aren't you?" the man continued, still smiling that horrible smile. "Wondering how we knew exactly which route you'd take? How we knew you'd be driving alone today?" Marcus backed away from the gazebo. "Who are you people?" "We're your new neighbors, Marcus, your new family. And this," he gestured around at the perfect little town, "this is your new home." Marcus turned and ran back toward his car, but froze when he saw what was waiting. The 4 Crown Victorias from the chase had entered the town and were parked around his sedan in a tight circle. Their drivers stood beside the vehicles in dark clothes, maintaining that mechanical stillness. "There's nowhere to go, Marcus," the elderly man called from the gazebo. His voice carried clearly across the small park. "And really, why would you want to leave? We have everything you need here." "What is this place?" Marcus shouted back. "It's a special community, a place for people like you, people who were selected." "Selected for what?" The man stood up and walked to the gazebo's edge. Up close, Marcus could see that his pleasant smile never reached his eyes. His eyes were flat, empty. "For participation in our little social experiment. You see, there are organizations very interested in human behavior, how people react to isolation, how they adapt to new circumstances, how long it takes to break someone's will and rebuild them into something more compliant." Marcus felt his legs go weak. "You're insane." "Am I? Look around you, son. Look at this beautiful community we've built. Everyone here is happy and content. They've learned to accept their new lives. The people in the houses, oh yes, they're all quite real. All former travelers like yourself who took the wrong detour. Some have been here for months, some for years. They've all found their place in our little society." Marcus looked around at the identical houses with their perfect lawns and dark sedans. What happened to their cars? Why does everyone have the same? "We provide everything our residents need: transportation, housing, food, employment. In return, we ask only for cooperation and acceptance. And if someone doesn't cooperate?" The man's smile widened, but those dead eyes remained unchanged. "Everyone cooperates eventually, Marcus. Some take longer than others, but in the end, they all come to understand that resistance is pointless." Before Marcus could react, the men in dark clothing began moving toward him with that same mechanical precision. He tried to run, but there were too many of them, and they seemed to know exactly what he would do before he did it. Within seconds, they had surrounded him. "Don't make this difficult," It will go easier if you cooperate," one of them said, in a voice completely devoid of emotion. They escorted Marcus, not roughly, but with firmness, to one of the houses on a side street. The front door was painted the same off-white as everything else, with a brass number, 247. "This is your home now," the elderly man said, having followed them from the park. "You'll find everything you need inside. Clothes in your size, food in the refrigerator, books and entertainment materials. Your job assignment will begin on Monday." Job assignment? Everyone in our community contributes. You'll be working in our data processing center. Your software development skills will be quite useful. They ushered him through the front door into a living room that looked like it had been furnished from a catalog. Everything was clean and modern. The neighbors are very friendly. They will introduce themselves once you've settled in and help you understand how things work here. What if I refuse and try to leave? "Marcus, look out the window." The man's voice became gentle, almost paternal. Marcus went to the living room window and peered through the blinds. He could see other residents going about their daily activities outside. A woman watering her perfect lawn. A man washing his Crown Victoria in his driveway. Children playing in a nearby yard. They all moved with that same mechanical precision he'd noticed in the men who'd captured him. Their actions seemed rehearsed, their interactions stilted and artificial. They all tried to leave at first, fought, resisted, and planned elaborate escapes. But eventually, they learned that this is better, safer. No more worries about career, mortgage payments, relationship problems. No more uncertainty about the future. Everything is provided and planned. The man said softly, "You've brainwashed them. We've helped them find peace." The man moved toward the door. "I'll leave you to get settled. Dinner is at 6 o'clock in the community center. You'll hear the bell. Attendance is mandatory." He paused at the threshold. "Oh, and Marcus. The house is equipped with a comprehensive security system. For your protection, of course. The windows don't open and the doors are programmed to lock automatically at night. We wouldn't want anything to happen to you." The door closed with a soft click, and Marcus heard the unmistakable sound of electronic locks engaging. Marcus spent the first hour testing every escape route. The windows were sealed shut with reinforced glass, back door locked with electronic systems. Even basement windows were barred. The house was a prison disguised as a home. Everything he needed was provided. Stocked refrigerator, clothes in his exact size, television, books, even a computer. Though internet access showed only local community announcements. At exactly 6 o'clock, a bell chimed outside. Marcus watched residents emerge from identical houses and walk toward a larger building. They moved in perfect synchronization, like choreographed dancers. His front door clicked open. "Time for dinner," said one of the dark-clothed men in his doorway. "You don't want to be late?" The community center was sterile and generic. Long tables in neat rows, harsh fluorescent lighting. About 40 people sat eating the same meal in silence. Marcus was seated between a middle-aged woman and a young man in his early 20s. Both smiled pleasantly. "Welcome to the community," the woman said in a rehearsed voice. "I'm Sarah. I've been here for 8 months." "How did you—" Marcus began, but Sarah shook her head subtly. "We don't talk about the before times during meals," she whispered. "Only positive thoughts about our new life here." The young man leaned over. "I'm David. I've been here for 2 years. You'll learn to love it here, just like we all did." Something flickered in David's eyes, desperation or fear, that contradicted his cheerful words. when a supervisor walked by, his expression returned to artificial pleasantness. Marcus ate in silence, studying the other residents. They all had the same look, surface contentment masking something hollow underneath. After dinner, he was escorted back to his house. The locks engaged automatically. Marcus learned the routine over the next 3 days. Breakfast at 8, work from 9 to 5, dinner at 6, lights out at 10. His job was data processing in a windowless building. Other workers sat in perfect silence, typing steadily, never looking up. The work seemed meaningless, endless streams of numbers leading nowhere. On his third night, Marcus heard something that made his heart race. Morse code tapped softly against the wall, separating his house from the next. The message was simple but electrifying. Not alone. Some of us remember. Be ready. Marcus tapped back. Who are you? Sarah, from dinner. We have a plan. Over several nights, Marcus learned about the resistance. Not all residents had been broken. A small group, maybe 8 or 10 people, played their roles while secretly maintaining sanity and desire for freedom. Sarah had been a nurse driving to California. David, a college student heading home for spring break. Others, Michael, an accountant from Denver. Lisa, a teacher from Phoenix. Robert, a retired military officer visiting grandchildren. They communicated through Morse code, coded bulletin board messages, subtle hand signals during meals. The key is the motor pool, Sarah explained through the wall. All Crown Victorias are kept in a garage behind the administration building. But they must be locked, Marcus tapped back. Robert thinks he can hotwire them, military training. Problem is getting there undetected. They planned for 2 weeks. Supervisors followed predictable patterns, but at least 2 were always awake and patrolling. Houses were monitored by motion detection. Even stealing a car meant navigating the forest maze back to civilization. But Marcos had recent memory of the route in. Guards change shifts at 2 a.m., Robert explained during a bathroom meeting. 3-minute window when night supervisors do equipment checks. That's our chance. The escape was planned for Thursday night. Marcus lay fully clothed under covers, waiting for the signal. At exactly 1:57 a.m., he heard the soft tap. Operation beginning. Motion sensors had a blind spot Robert had discovered. By staying low along baseboards, they could reach back doors without triggering alarms. Sarah had stolen a maintenance keycard during cleaning. One by one, the 8 resistance members slipped out and gathered behind the community center. Marcus's heart pounded. Stay together until the motor pool, Robert whispered. If anyone gets caught, the rest keep going. They moved through shadows between buildings, using hand signals. The town was eerily quiet, lit only by evenly spaced street lamps. The motor pool was a large garage behind the administration building. Through windows, Marcus saw rows of identical Crown Victorias. Robert worked on the lock while others kept watch. Got it, he whispered. The garage door opened with a soft rumble that sounded deafeningly loud, but no alarms rang, no supervisors came. These 2, Robert said, pointing to cars near the exit. Marcus climbed into the passenger seat, while Robert worked under the dashboard. The other 6 members crowded into the second vehicle. Come on, Marcus whispered as Robert twisted wires. The engine turned over. Let's go, Robert said, putting the car in drive. Floodlights suddenly blazed throughout the garage. They'd been caught. "Drive!" Marcus shouted. Robert gunned the engine. The Crown Victoria shot out just as dark-clothed figures emerged from the administration building. The second car followed, tires squealing. Shouts echoed through night air. More floodlights came on throughout the community. "Which way?" Robert asked at the main intersection. "Straight through town, then left at the Forest Road," Marcus replied. The Crown Victoria was powerful and fast, designed for pursuit. Robert drove with military precision, taking corners at dangerous speeds. In the mirror, Marcus saw headlights converging. Not just one or two cars, but dozens. Every Crown Victoria in the community was joining the chase. "They're gaining," Robert said through gritted teeth. The Forest Road was rough. The Crown Victoria handled better than Marcus's sedan had, but pursuers had the same advantage. The gap remained constant, close enough to see expressionless faces in the headlight glare. "Left here," Marcus called at a fork. "You sure?" "I think so. Maybe. It all looks the same in the dark." They took the left fork. For a few minutes, headlights seemed to fall back. But then they crested a hill and saw the trap waiting. A roadblock. Crown Victoria's parked across the narrow road, just like Marcus's original capture. But this time, many more. "Hold on," Robert said, and floored the accelerator. Robert gunned the Crown Victoria straight at the roadblock, aiming for a narrow gap between two parked cars. Metal screamed as they hit, glass exploding inward while airbags punched them backward. The world spun in slow motion, once, twice, before their car slammed upside down into the roadside ditch. Marcus hung from his seatbelt, warm blood trickling down his face. Robert was motionless beside him, breathing but unconscious. The smell of gasoline mixed with the sound of approaching footsteps. That familiar, mechanical rhythm. "Help me get them out," came a voice, flat, emotionless. Through the spiderwebbed windshield, Marcus watched their backup car surrounded by dark figures. All 6 resistance members stood with their hands raised, defeat written on their faces. The escape failed in minutes. The elderly man emerged from the headlight glare, his smile intact despite the chaos. "Bring them back," he said pleasantly. "We need to discuss community rules." Marcus came to in a sterile white box. No windows, no door handle, just 4 walls and a metal table. Zip ties bit into his wrists as the elderly man settled across from him, looking like a kindly grandfather rather than their captor. "I'm disappointed, Marcus." That smooth voice carried genuine hurt. "We've given you everything. Home, purpose, community. Is this how you repay generosity?" Marcus's throat felt raw. "Let me go." "Go. My dear boy, you still don't understand. You're not imprisoned here. You're home." The man's smile never wavered. "Your friends are safe. Robert's recovering nicely, and the others are back where they belong, reconsidering their choices." The door opened behind Marcus. 2 supervisors wheeled in equipment that belonged in a hospital. Monitors, IV stands, devices with blinking lights he couldn't identify. "Don't worry," the elderly man said, noting Marcus's expression. "We've learned that punishment creates martyrs, but helping people understand why resistance is futile, that's much more effective." He stood as the supervisors began connecting wires. "We're simply going to help you remember why you wanted to leave, then help you forget those troublesome feelings." Three days blurred together in a nightmare of psychological surgery. They never hurt him physically, but dissected his mind with surgical precision. Videos played endlessly. His Seattle life, his office cubicle, friends. But the narration twisted everything into failure and loneliness. Between video sessions came the audio treatments, mantras about community benefits and individual futility that seemed to crawl inside his skull and nest there. The words echoed even in silence, wearing grooves in his thoughts. But Marcus had a secret weapon. He spent years with his grandmother during her dementia, who taught him how to hold on to himself when everything else dissolved. "Remember who you love, they're your anchor," she'd whispered during a lucid moment. So while propaganda washed over him, Marcus clung to his sister Emma, her terrible jokes, her excitement about the wedding, her voice on the phone bubbling with plans for her future. She'd be wondering where he was by now. The ceremony was tomorrow, or maybe today. Time had lost all meaning in this windowless hell. On the third day, they served him food that tasted wrong, bitter, with an aftertaste that lingered like copper pennies. Whatever they drugged him with made his thoughts feel distant, as if he were watching his own mind from across a room. "You're making excellent progress," the elderly man observed during his daily visit. "The resistance is fading beautifully." But Marcus held Emma's laugh like a lifeline, refusing to let it slip away. They moved Marcus to a larger room on the fourth day, still windowless, but with a bed and bathroom. The elderly man called it a transition facility, where residents completed their adjustment before returning to community life. "You'll have a roommate, someone who's been here much longer." The door opened, and Marcus's heart stopped. Robert walked in, but his eyes held that same vacant quality Marcus had seen in the long-term residence. His movements were mechanical, deliberate. "Hello, Marcus," Robert said in a voice stripped of all warmth. "I'm glad to see you're making progress." "Robert, what did they do to you?" "They helped me understand the truth. Resistance is futile. Acceptance brings peace." The words sounded rehearsed, perfectly delivered, but completely hollow. "I was foolish to fight something so beneficial." Marcus stared at the shell of the proud military officer who had spoken so lovingly of his wife and grandchildren. This was his future, a walking corpse wearing Robert's face. But then Marcus noticed something. Robert's words were flawless, but when he thought no one was watching, tiny cracks appeared, a slight tremor in his hands, a flicker across his features. Was Robert acting? Marcus watched carefully over the next 2 days. During supervisor checks, Robert performed perfectly. Approved phrases, mechanical movements, no trace of personality. But at night, in the darkness, subtle changes emerged. His breathing shifted, his posture relaxed. Once, Marcus was certain he heard Robert whisper a woman's name. On the second night, Marcus took a gamble. "Margaret," he whispered into the darkness. Robert's breath caught. His facade cracked just enough to reveal the pain underneath. "Don't," Robert whispered back, his voice suddenly human. "They're always listening. But you're still you. You remember. Remembering hurts too much. It's easier to let go." "What about Margaret? Your grandchildren?" Silence stretched between them. Then, barely audible, "They told me Margaret died in a car accident. Showed me newspaper clippings, death certificates. Said there was no point remembering someone who was gone." "Do you believe them?" "I don't know what to believe anymore. They're very convincing. They have documentation for everything." Marcus felt hope surge through his chest. "It's all fake, Robert. They're lying." "How can you be sure?" because they tried the same thing with me. But I know the truth. I know who's waiting for me." In the darkness, Robert began to cry, the first genuine emotion Marcus had seen since his return. "I've been here 2 years," Robert whispered. "Sometimes I can't tell what's real anymore." "Then hold on to what you know for certain," Marcus said, remembering his grandmother's words. "Hold on to love. That's the one thing they can't take unless you let them." Over the following week, they worked together in whispered darkness. Robert's apparent submission had earned him privileges: library visits, work assignments throughout the facility, even supervised walks in the park. "The perimeter isn't as secure as they pretend," Robert explained. "There are blind spots in the surveillance, places where the forest comes close to the buildings." Most of the other resistance members had been transferred to individual facilities, but Sarah and David remained in the main community. If they could somehow reach them. Robert had identified their opportunity. The supervisors used handheld radios on frequencies he recognized from his military service. During work assignments, he'd noticed the radios were often left unattended in the break room. "If I can access one for just a few minutes, I can contact the outside world," Robert said. "Emergency frequencies, police dispatch, maybe military channels." The plan was simple. Marcus would create a distraction during Robert's next work assignment, giving him access to the radio. It was a desperate long shot, but their only chance. They set it for Tuesday. Tuesday morning arrived grey and oppressive, low clouds pressing down like a coffin lid. Marcus woke with his heart already hammering, knowing this might be their last chance at freedom. Robert left for his work assignment at 9, maintaining his perfect facade. At 10:30, Marcus began flooding their bathroom, blocking the drain with towels and leaving faucets running at full pressure. Within minutes, water spread across the floor and seeped into the hallway. When supervisors discovered the accident, Marcus played the confused, still adjusting resident who had simply made a mistake. Both supervisors rushed to deal with the flood, leaving their posts unmanned. 3 floors away, Robert saw his opportunity. The break room was empty, 2 radios sitting unattended. He grabbed one and tuned it to an emergency frequency from his military days. "Mayday, Mayday," he whispered. "This is retired Staff Sergeant Robert Chen, military ID 47291. I am being held against my will with 40 other civilians at an unknown location in the Oregon forest. We need immediate assistance." Static crackled back. Then, impossibly, a voice. "This is Oregon State Police Dispatch. Can you repeat your message and provide a location?" Robert's hands trembled. "I don't know our exact coordinates. We're in some kind of compound disguised as a small town. Forest Service roads lead here, but they use fake detour signs to lure people in." "Sir, can you provide landmarks?" "Distinctive features. There's a gazebo in the center of town. About 30 identical houses, everything painted off-white, and there are 12 Crown Victoria sedans." Footsteps in the hallway. Robert quickly shut off the radio and resumed his work as if nothing had happened. But had the message gotten through? Had anyone been listening? For 3 days, nothing changed. The routine continued. Meals, work assignments, endless surveillance. Marcus began to wonder if the radio call had been dismissed as a prank or intercepted entirely. But Thursday afternoon, everything shifted. Marcus was in the facility library, pretending to read while studying the building's layout, when he heard something that made his blood sing. Helicopters. The sound grew steadily louder, accompanied by vehicle engines approaching from multiple directions. Through the small windows, Marcus caught glimpses of movement in the forest, dark shapes moving between trees with military precision. An alarm shrieked throughout the facility, harsh and urgent. Over the intercom, all residents return to quarters immediately. This is not a drill. Instead of returning to his room, Marcus ran toward the main entrance. Other residents emerged from various parts of the building, their artificial compliance cracking under the pressure of genuine crisis. For the first time since his capture, Marcus saw real emotion on their faces. Through the front windows, he watched police cars, unmarked federal vehicles, and military transport trucks approach the compound. Helicopters circled overhead as armed figures rappelled down ropes. The elderly man burst through the main doors, his pleasant facade completely abandoned. "Lockdown procedures now," he shouted to supervisors. "Initiate full containment protocol." Too late. The front doors exploded inward as federal agents stormed inside, weapons drawn. "Federal agents, everyone on the ground, now." Chaos erupted, the most beautiful chaos Marcus had ever experienced. Federal agents swarmed through the facility, separating genuine residents from their captors. The robotic supervisors tried to maintain their calm, but several attempted to flee and were quickly apprehended. Marcos found himself surrounded by FBI agents, paramedics, and military personnel. A kind-faced lady in a federal jacket knelt beside him. "Are you Marcus Flynn?" "Yes," he managed. "Agent Sarah Martinez, FBI. We received a radio transmission 3 days ago from someone claiming to be held here. Do you know a Robert Chen?" "He's here somewhere. He's the one who called you. He saved us all." Within minutes, Marcos was reunited with Robert. The older man looked years younger, as if a tremendous weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "I can't believe it worked," Robert said, tears streaming down his face. "Your transmission reached State Police Dispatch in Salem," Agent Martinez explained. "They forwarded it to us. We used satellite imagery to identify the compound and coordinated this raid." Around them, other residents were being led to safety. Some seemed genuinely confused, still trapped in psychological conditioning. Others, like Sarah and David from the original resistance, appeared to be rapidly awakening from a nightmare. "How many people were held here?" Marcus asked. "At least 40 individuals, some for years. This is going to be a massive investigation." The elderly man was led past them in handcuffs, flanked by federal agents. For the first time since Marcus had met him, the man's composure was completely shattered. He looked like what he really was, a criminal who had finally been caught. "Who are they?" Marcus asked. "What was this place?" Agent Martinez's expression darkened. "We're still piecing it together, but it appears connected to a larger organization involved in human trafficking and psychological experimentation. Illegal research funded by entities we're still trying to identify." Over the next several hours, as FBI agents processed the scene and interviewed survivors, a horrifying picture emerged. The community wasn't an isolated operation. It was part of a network of similar facilities scattered across the country. The fake detour signs were just one method, Agent Martinez explained during Marcus's debriefing. They also operated bogus emergency services, fake roadside assistance, even created staged accidents to strand travelers in remote areas. The organization called it social compliance research, studying how quickly they could break down human resistance and rebuild people as obedient subjects. The data was being sold to foreign governments and domestic groups interested in population control. The people running this weren't just criminals, the agent continued. They were part of a sophisticated operation with connections to defense contractors, private military companies, and what we suspect are foreign intelligence services. Marcus's capture hadn't been random. They had monitored his social media, travel patterns, even family relationships. They knew about Emma's wedding, knew he'd be traveling alone, knew exactly which route he'd take. "Your sister has been frantic," Agent Martinez said gently. "She reported you missing when you didn't show up for the rehearsal dinner. That missing person report helped us confirm your identity when we received Robert's transmission. The thought of Emma refusing to accept, he was simply gone, organizing search parties, fighting to find him even when authorities might have assumed he'd just decided not to show up, brought tears to his eyes. When can I see her?" "Soon. We need to complete your medical evaluation and debriefing, but you should be able to contact your family within the next few hours." The medical evaluation revealed the full extent of what had been done to them. Blood tests showed traces of psychoactive drugs designed to increase suggestibility and reduce resistance. Brain scans revealed subtle changes consistent with prolonged psychological manipulation. The good news is that most effects appear reversible, the doctor explained. "With proper therapy and time, you should make a full recovery. The human mind is remarkably resilient. But recovery would be a long process. Some residents held for years would need extensive psychological rehabilitation. The organization had been devastatingly effective at breaking down victims' identities and replacing them with artificial compliance. Robert, despite his longer captivity, was in better condition than many others. His military training had given him mental discipline that helped him maintain his core identity under extreme pressure. The fact that you both managed to maintain resistance, even after their treatments, is remarkable, their assigned psychologist explained. It suggests strong psychological foundations and support systems they couldn't completely erase. 3 days after the rescue, Marcus was finally allowed to contact his family. The phone call with Emma was one of the most emotional experiences of his life. "Marcus, oh my God, is it really you?" Her voice was thick with tears. "It's me, Em. I'm okay. I'm safe. Where have you been?" "We looked everywhere, called police, had search parties. I was kidnapped, held in some kind of compound. But the FBI found us. We're all safe now." Emma sobbed into the phone, and Marcus found himself crying too, finally allowing himself to feel the full weight of what he had survived. "The wedding," he started. "Screw the wedding," Emma said fiercely. "We postponed everything the moment you disappeared. The only thing that matters is that you're alive." Over the following weeks, as Marcus underwent therapy and slowly readjusted to normal life, the full scope of the criminal organization emerged. The FBI's investigation, dubbed Operation Free Bird, uncovered a network of at least 12 similar facilities across 7 states. The organization had operated for over a decade, with an estimated 400 victims. Some had been released after their research value was exhausted, but with memories so damaged they couldn't provide coherent accounts. Others had simply disappeared, their fates unknown. Marcus testified before a federal grand jury, describing his capture, imprisonment, and systematic psychological abuse. Reliving those experiences was difficult, but he was determined to help ensure justice. The elderly man who had overseen his captivity was identified as Dr. Harrison Webb, a former military psychologist dismissed for conducting unauthorized experiments on prisoners of war. He was the architect of the organization's manipulation techniques. Webb and 17 other members were indicted on charges ranging from kidnapping and human trafficking to violations of the Geneva Convention regarding medical experimentation. The trial would be a media sensation, but Marcus was ready. He had found his voice again, and he was going to use it. Months after his rescue, Marcus stood in his sister's backyard, watching Emma and her husband David cut their wedding cake. The ceremony had been small and intimate, nothing like the elaborate affair originally planned, but it was perfect. Marcus had walked Emma down the aisle, a role that meant more to both of them than anyone else could understand. Every step had been a victory over the forces that tried to keep them apart. His recovery had been challenging. The psychological damage hadn't healed overnight. He still had nightmares, still felt anxiety in enclosed spaces, still found himself looking over his shoulder on unfamiliar roads. But he was getting better, with therapy and unwavering support from family and friends. Robert Chen had become a close friend. The older man's reunion with his wife Margaret, who was very much alive and had been searching tirelessly, had been another emotional milestone in their recovery. "How are you holding up?" Emma asked, finding Marcus alone on the patio as the reception continued around them. "Good," he said, and meant it. Really good. "Any regrets about postponing the big wedding? I know you felt guilty." Marcus shook his head. "This is better. This is real. All those months in that place, all I could think about was getting back to the people I love. Grand gestures don't matter. Being here matters." Emma squeezed his arm. "I'm proud of you, for surviving, for fighting back, for helping put those monsters away." The trial had concluded the previous month with convictions for all 17 defendants. Dr. Webb received life in prison without parole. The other facilities in the network had been shut down, their victims rescued and provided with help. "I keep thinking about all the people who didn't make it," Marcus said. "The ones who were released with destroyed memories or who just disappeared entirely." "You can't save everyone," Emma said gently. "But you saved yourself and dozens of others. That has to count for something." Two years later, Marcus gripped his car keys at the interstate on-ramp. He'd avoided highways since his captivity, until today. Today, he was driving to Sacramento to speak at a human trafficking conference. The route would take him past the exact spot where fake detour signs had led him into hell. His hands shook as he started the engine. The first hour was brutal. White knuckles, constant mirror checks, shallow breathing. But mile by mile, the tension melted away. Clear road ahead, full signal, GPS locked on target. At the rest stop where it all began, a new historical marker caught his eye. In memory of those who lost their lives or freedom to organize criminal exploitation, may their courage serve as a reminder that no one travels alone. Marcus smiled, thinking of Robert with his grandchildren, Sarah back to nursing trauma patients, David counseling at-risk youth. All of them had turned their scars into superpowers. He climbed back into his car, no longer afraid of detours. Sometimes the unexpected path leads exactly where you need to go. The highway stretched ahead, bright, clear, infinite with possibility. Marcus hit the gas, eager to see what waited around the next bend, because the human spirit doesn't just survive, it soars. Thank you for watching and listening. See you next time, another day, with another chilling story. Till then, stay well, stay safe,